Hello and welcome to today's episode on Craft of the Draft as part of our Coates Talent League club by club previews. And today we're placing a focus on the Northern Knights and their season ahead. And to do so with me is Craft of the Draft analyst Jonty Rell-Smith. Jonty, how are you?
Yeah, very good, Mitch. How are you?
Very, very well. Keen for this one as a Northern boy myself. The Knights are always one that I'm happy to keep an eye on. And this year's squad is going to be quite an interesting one. Some familiar faces, some good bottom-age talent, and some names that even some of the, even just a basic AFL fan might know from some surnames and players currently in the league. And I guess a player that will headline some of the Knights' campaign for the year ahead is Tyson Gresham, young brother of Jay Gresham. And while he might be unlikely to join his brother at the Bombers because he is actually linked to Carlton as an NGO prospect, which is another part of the tale in his campaign ahead. What have you kind of made of Ty from his last 12 months, and what do you kind of see from him for the year ahead?
Yeah, really, really promising. Ty Gresham is the only Northern Knights top-ager in the Vic Metro Summer Hub, so naturally there is going to be a fair bit of focus on him. He's a small forward, and he's part of this modern generation of small forwards we've seen with Nick Watson, Isaac Kako. There was so much excitement about him last year, obviously, as well, making his debut last week for Essendon. And yeah, just high pressure, got the ability to win a contested footy and has multiple ways that he can kick goals and has that natural forward nous that you need, but probably more importantly, brings that energy to the team and is sort of capable of being that game changer. You can throw him into the midfield for 10 minutes. That's probably something we haven't seen of him going into the midfield as much, but from all reports, we'll see it a little bit more this year for the Northern Knights, just to show that he's got that. But certainly what he's shown so far in the front half of the ground would suggest that he'd be able to be that sort of player. We've seen Tom Papley, for example, as a small forward who can do that very effectively. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how Tyson Gresham's year pans out for the Knights.
Obviously, when we talk about the mould of player he might be, you're suggesting he might not be too much like his brother Jade in the fact that he's probably purely a deeper forward option. He can obviously run up the ground, and as you said, we'll get midfield minutes like we saw with a Kako, but you view him as more of that pure, crafty, pressurised small forward that a Kako has been and the Nick Watson before him.
Yeah, I think so. I think his best work is going to come closer to goal. And I think we've seen with the sort of players that are sort of his height, there has been more of a tendency for AFL clubs to pick them up. But when they are picking them up, certainly in the last couple of years, it has tended to be as that deeper forward, as that player who's got that sort of ability and ability to own the front 30 metres of the ground and make it their own and kick goals from anywhere in that part of the ground. I think the thing to note for him from a Carlton perspective as well is that he's probably someone that's going to be quite ideal for them if indeed they do choose to match a bid that comes for him later in the year, because they haven't really had a small forward take the competition apart since Eddie Betts, and they don't necessarily have one on their list at the moment. Jesse Motlop's one that's maybe shown signs at times, but since 2014, Eddie Betts and Matt Owies are the only two players who have averaged more than a goal per game in any season among small forwards. They've obviously been so reliant on Charlie Curnow and Harry Mackay, but the game's probably transitioning away from being overly reliant on tall forwards. So yeah, getting the small guys in there is something that Carlton will no doubt look to do, certainly with the list profile that they've got as well. And yeah, he's one that could fit that quite perfectly, I think.
Yeah, well, obviously we've seen the expectation on Isaac Kako with given Essendon's list needs for a small forward. And you're right, Carlton very much the same. They have probably 6 or 7 small forward options, but no standout in that season like we saw from Matt Owies. They lose him, and then it's Zach Williams, Francis Evans, Lockie Fogarty, Corey Durden, and then on top of that, Jesse Motlop as well. So even some of them, it'll be quite interesting, as you mentioned, to see how that plays out and if they see Gresham as a list need and where that might fit for them come the end of the year. Another player we want to discuss as well for the Northern Knights is Mitch Moat, player who spent just about all of last year on the sidelines with an ACL injury, a player that you got to speak to over the off-season about his road back to recovery, his chats with Christian Petrarca, and that's an interview you can go check out on Zero Hanger's YouTube page. But Mitch looks like he's ripe and raring to go. He's keen to get back at least in the coming months and really have an impact in a draft campaign after obviously quite an interrupted last 12 months.
Yeah, certainly. He's one who there was a lot of excitement about, I think, going into his bottom age season, what he could do. I think there was the expectation, if you can say, that if the Vic Metro Summer Hub squad was selected in March last year, he's one that certainly would have been right there or thereabouts. But then, yeah, obviously just didn't play any footy after April as a result of an ACL injury that you noted. But yeah, had a really strong preseason and is on the way back from that now. He's trained a fair bit with Zach Johnson, who's at Essendon. He goes through that in that interview that you referenced that you can see on Zero Hanger. But in terms of what sort of player he is, I think when he does return after probably missing the first couple of games of the season, he'll be a strong-bodied midfielder, the sort of player who can cover the ground really well and then possibly go forward as well and kick some goals. We saw that a little bit from him in the under-16s national championships, and he'll be hoping to rediscover or build on that form in 2025. And I think he's certainly one that, if you look at the players who are outside the Metro Hub at the moment that could work their way in and play national championships football, he's probably front of that list, provided he has no worries adapting to the speed of the game upon his return in late April, early May.
Just you mentioned Zach Johnson because obviously the Knights did quite well last year. I think they got 3 names in, one of them being a first rounder, Jesse Zatoli, Thomas Sims, the first pick of the following round, and then Johnson just about rounded out the national draft. And I guess when you're talking about their first round quality prospects, they've usually put 1 or 2 forward the last few seasons. Will Green and Nate Caddy, others, and they tend to be key position players. We looked at Gabriel Stumpf, might have been one that was unlucky to miss out last year. So where do you see their key position prospects for the year ahead? Are we looking at top ages or bottom ages?
Yeah, well, you talked about Gabe Stumpf, who, absolutely blitzed the combine testing. He was unbelievable, over 20 metres for a key position player to run as quickly as he did was very, very impressive. His agility is quite strong as well, and he's got that vertical leap to be able to jump at the footy. He's coming back as a 19-year-old. So looking forward to seeing what we do get from him, because we saw in spurts what he was capable of, and he was probably the ultimate tease player because of how athletically gifted he was, and a couple of the things that he did show. Just wasn't able to put it together probably consistently enough in a strong draft to get taken. But yeah, he'll return and will be one who will hope to put his name on mid-season draft radars with some strong early season performances as a 19-year-old. But by and large, I think the Northern Knights will be quite confident in their bottom ages from a key position point of view. They've got Tate Hodgson, who's already seen as one of the stronger prospects for the 2026 draft. He performed very strongly for Vic Metro last year, and he also got about half a season in for the Northern Knights playing as a key defender. And he was really, really impressive in those games. He wasn't sort of outstrengthed, which we know some young key position players can be. He reads the ball really well in flight, and having that level of coach league experience going into your bottom age year is a big tick. And then Harry Van Huddem as well is another one who is tall, and he'll have a role to play down back alongside Tate Hodgson. So yeah, a couple of players for the Northern Knights to be quite excited about. And the positive is that there are some quality key position forwards in this draft class. We look at Archie Ludowick and Tyron Armour as an example of a couple, as well as Cooper Duff-Tytler and Louis Emmett, who will mix their time between ruck and forward. That will enable those two to play on some high caliber forwards in their bottom age campaign, which will no doubt prepare them well for their top age year next year.
So the rest of the Northern Knights squad, who are the kind of some of the names that you think will be of great focus in their 2025 campaign?
Yeah, Roman Moxon's a player I quite like. He goes to Marcelin College, so he doesn't play the full season, but his kicking efficiency coming out of the back half is something that's quite impressive. I think you look for him to take the kick-ins and really set the game up doing that. Nick Canavan is a player who's got a bit of strength. Ryan Commander has had a strong preseason from all reports and runs a rapid 2-kilometre time trial. And then they've also got James Allison, a Parade College boy, alongside Tyson Gresham and Mitch Moat, who we've discussed. So they're probably the ones to keep an eye out for. A familiar name, Seb Murphy, will play off the half-forward line as well as that higher sort of player. He's the brother of Lockie Murphy from Adelaide. And they'll also have Sam Gafer, who they're quite high on as a bottom-ager, played Vic Metro under-16s last year.
Perfect. Well, the Northern Knights, their season gets underway in round one, opening bout on Sunday, March 30 against the Eastern Rangers, hoping for another strong season and obviously plenty of prospects putting their names up for draft contention. Jonty, thanks again for covering today's episode on our Coates Talent League Club by Club previews.
No worries. Thanks, Mitch.
You can catch all the rest of our previews on Zero Hanger's YouTube page and also head to zerohanger.com for all the latest news, views, and draft opinions.